The girl was 9 years old when the story truly began, and her world was already shaped by sound, touch, memory, and careful steps. Rather than sight, she had been born with a visual condition that meant light and shapes never came to her in the way they came to others, yet her life was far from dark. Because music filled every empty space, her name was known in her family and local school for one simple reason. She listened deeply from a very young age. She could hear things others missed: the soft creak, the difference between footsteps on wood and stone, the small changes in tone that revealed emotion in a voice. This deep listening slowly became the foundation of her bond with music. Her parents noticed early that she reacted strongly to melodies. When a song played on the radio, she would stop whatever she was doing and turn her head toward the sound. Her small hands would move gently in the air, as if she were touching the notes. Her mother often said that music seemed to calm her in a way nothing else could. When she was upset or afraid, a simple tune hummed softly could bring her back to peace. In a home where challenges were part of daily life, music became a shared language that connected everyone. When she was 5 years old, her parents introduced her to a small keyboard. It was not expensive and had a few keys that did not always sound perfect. But it did not matter. The first time her fingers touched the keys, she smiled widely. She pressed one key, then another, slowly exploring how each sound felt in her body. She did not see the keyboard, yet she quickly learned its layout through touch. Her fingers remembered where to go, and her ears guided her when something sounded wrong. This moment marked the beginning of countless hours spent practicing, exploring, and learning. As she grew older, her interest turned into discipline. She practiced every day with patience. Beyond her years, her teacher noticed something special: not just talent, but emotional understanding. When she played simple pieces, she did not rush. She allowed each note to breathe. She felt the music rather than simply reproducing it. Her teacher often said that she played as if she were telling a story, even when the piece was short and simple. School life was not always easy. She faced moments of frustration when others moved faster, or when spaces were unfamiliar, yet music gave her confidence. During school events, she was invited to play, and each time she did, the room seemed to change. People became quiet and attentive, not out of pity, but out of genuine admiration. Children who once did not know how to speak to her began to see her differently. They saw her as the girl who played beautifully, not as the girl who could not see. One piece in particular began to hold a special place in her heart. The second waltz, its flowing rhythm, gentle rise and fall, and emotional depth spoke to her deeply. She listened to recordings again and again, memorizing every movement. She practiced it slowly, carefully, letting her fingers learn the shape of the music. Over time, the piece became part of her. She did not think of it as difficult. She thought of it as familiar, like a friend. Her teacher suggested that she perform the piece at a small school concert. The idea both excited and frightened her. She had performed before, but this felt different. The second waltz was longer and more expressive. It required focus and emotional strength. Her parents supported the idea, knowing how much the piece meant to her. They practiced walking onto the stage, with her counting steps, touching landmarks, so she would feel safe and confident. In the days leading up to the concert, she practiced more than ever, not out of pressure, but out of love. She wanted the music to sound honest. She wanted to express what she felt when she played it. Her teacher reminded her to breathe and trust herself. The music was already inside her. On the evening of the concert, the school hall filled with parents, teachers, and students. The atmosphere was warm and supportive. When it was her turn, she walked carefully to the piano, guided by memory and gentle cues. She sat down, adjusted her posture, and placed her hands on the keys. The room grew quiet, not with tension, but with anticipation. She began to play, and from the first notes it was clear that something special was happening. Her playing was calm, steady, and full of feeling. Each phrase flowed naturally. Her face showed deep concentration and emotion. She was not aware of who was watching or how many people were listening. She was simply inside the music. Among the audience that evening was someone unexpected, someone whose life had been shaped by music on the grandest stages, someone who understood the power of a single melody to move hearts. This person listened quietly, drawn in by the sincerity of her performance. He did not come with plans or expectations. He simply listened. This was the moment when two worlds were about to meet: the world of a young girl playing with pure heart, and the world of a master who had dedicated his life to sharing music with millions. The stage was set not by design, but by fate and by the universal language of music. The quiet in the hall deepened as the girl continued to play, and the music carried gently through the space. Her fingers moved with certainty, guided by memory and sound, rather than sight. Each note felt placed with care and meaning, and the audience leaned forward without realizing it. Parents who had come expecting a simple school concert felt something shift inside them. They were no longer listening casually. They were being drawn into the emotional world of a child who spoke through music more clearly than through words. The teacher stood at the side of the room, watching closely. She had seen the girl practice many times, yet this performance felt different. There was a calm strength in her posture, and an honesty in her playing that could not be taught. The teacher felt a quiet pride, and also a sense of wonder. She knew moments like this were rare, when preparation and emotion met perfectly. The girl herself felt safe inside the music. The hall, the audience, and the small sounds around her faded away. She focused on the rise and fall of the melody, on the way the waltz seemed to breathe. She felt the piano respond to her touch, and she adjusted instinctively. When a note needed more weight or softness, her body remembered every movement. and her heart guided the rest. In the audience, the unexpected listener felt something familiar stir inside him. He had heard countless performances by trained professionals in grand halls, yet this simple school stage held a purity that touched him deeply. He listened not with analysis, but with feeling. He recognized the courage it took for a child to sit alone on a stage and trust music completely. He recognized the honesty that cannot be rehearsed. As the piece unfolded, the audience forgot to whisper or move. Even the children sat still, sensing that this moment deserved respect. Some parents felt tears rise not from sadness, but from a deep emotional connection. They saw resilience and beauty intertwined in a way that reminded them of what truly matters. The girl reached the middle section of the waltz, where the melody grows more expressive. She leaned slightly into the keys, letting the sound swell naturally. Her breathing stayed steady. Her face reflected the emotion she felt inside, calm, yet intense, focused, yet open. She did not rush. She allowed the music to speak at its own pace. Backstage, a staff member noticed the presence of the distinguished guest and felt a moment of surprise, yet no one interrupted. The respect for the performance was complete. The man remained still, allowing the girl to own the stage and the moment. As the final section approached, the atmosphere felt almost suspended. The girl sensed the piece nearing its end, and her fingers prepared instinctively. She played the closing phrases with tenderness, giving each note space to resonate. When the final sound faded, she lifted her hands gently and sat still for a brief moment, breathing quietly. Then the applause began, soft at first, then growing stronger, filling the hall with warmth and admiration. The girl smiled slightly, recognizing the sound. She stood carefully and bowed. As she had practiced, her parents felt a wave of emotion, knowing how much this moment meant to her. What the girl did not know yet was that this performance had reached beyond the small hall. It had reached the heart of someone who understood the power of music to change lives. And as the applause continued, a quiet decision was forming, one that would soon turn this simple school concert into a memory shared far beyond those walls. The applause slowly softened, and the hall returned to a gentle calm. The girl remained standing near the piano, listening to the sound of appreciation wash over her. She recognized the warmth in the clapping, and it made her feel lighter, as if the music had carried her somewhere safe and brought her back again. Her teacher approached and spoke quietly, offering reassurance and pride. The girl nodded, smiling shyly, still holding the feeling of the music inside her. Behind the scenes, the distinguished listener stood and began to move without drawing attention. He did not want to interrupt or change the moment, yet something inside him felt certain. He had spent a lifetime responding to music, and this performance had spoken to him. Clearly, he walked slowly toward the stage, allowing the applause to settle and the space to breathe. The parents in the audience noticed movement, and whispers spread softly as people recognized who was present. Surprise mixed with disbelief, yet the mood remained respectful and calm. No one wanted to break the atmosphere that had formed. The girl sensed a change in the room, not through sight, but through sound and energy. She tilted her head slightly, listening carefully. As footsteps approached the stage, the teacher gently placed a hand on the girl's shoulder and explained quietly that someone special was nearby. The girl listened calmly, trusting the voices she knew. She had learned to meet the world with openness rather than fear. She waited without moving, allowing the moment to unfold. The man stepped onto the stage and stood a short distance behind her. He did not speak immediately. He wanted her to feel safe and unpressured. He listened to the room and felt the quiet anticipation. He then spoke gently, introducing himself in a warm, natural voice. The girl turned toward the sound, smiling politely. She recognized the name from recordings her teacher had played for her, and her expression changed to one of surprise and joy. He praised her performance sincerely, speaking not as a celebrity, but as a fellow musician. He told her that her playing had touched him deeply, and that she had something rare, the ability to make people feel. The girl listened carefully, absorbing each word. Her parents watched from their seats, overwhelmed by the kindness and respect shown to their daughter. The man then asked her if she would like to play again, this time not alone. He offered to stand beside her and share the music. The hall held its breath. The girl paused briefly, then nodded with a confident smile. She trusted the language of music more than words, and she knew this was a moment to embrace. A violin was brought forward and tuned quietly. The girl returned to the piano, placing her hands on the keys. Once more she took a breath, feeling the familiar shape of the instrument beneath her fingers. She waited for the signal, not with nerves but with excitement. When they began, the sound of piano and violin blended gently, filling the hall with a richer, deeper emotion. The girl adjusted naturally, listening closely and responding to the violin. As if they had practiced together for years, the man followed her lead, respecting her tempo and expression, allowing her to guide the music. The audience listened in awe, witnessing not just a duet, but a connection formed through trust and mutual respect. The music flowed freely, carrying the shared emotion of everyone present. This moment was no longer just about talent or surprise. It was about connection, encouragement, and the power of music to bring people together without barriers. The music continued to flow through the hall with a quiet confidence that surprised everyone listening. The girl felt the presence of the violin beside her and adjusted her playing naturally. She listened closely to the rise and fall of its sound, and responded with gentle changes in pressure and timing. It felt less like following and more like a conversation where both voices understood each other without effort. The man remained attentive to her every movement. He matched her tempo carefully, never rushing or overpowering the piano. He allowed her to lead and shaped his playing around her choices. This respect was felt not only by the girl, but by everyone watching. It was clear that this was not a performance meant to impress, but a moment meant to support and uplift. The girl smiled as she played, sensing the harmony between them. She no longer felt the size of the room or the number of people present. She felt only the connection created by sound. Her confidence grew with each phrase, and her hands moved with freedom and assurance. The music carried warmth and sincerity that reached every corner of the hall. Parents and teachers exchanged glances filled with emotion. Many felt tears quietly forming, not from sadness, but from witnessing something pure and generous. Children watched with wide eyes, seeing an example of kindness and respect that would stay with them long after the concert ended. As the duet reached a gentle pause, the girl adjusted her posture and continued without hesitation. Her breathing stayed calm and steady. She trusted herself, and the musician beside her completely. The violin echoed her melody, adding depth and color. Without changing its heart, together they created something unique that could never be repeated in the same way again. The sound filled the space with a sense of unity. The hall no longer felt like a school room, but like a place where something meaningful was happening. People felt connected to one another through the shared experience. The music reminded them that beauty does not depend on perfection or status, but on honesty and care. As the final notes approached, the girl softened her touch, allowing the melody to settle peacefully. The violin followed gently, then slowly lifted away, letting the piano finish the phrase. The last sound lingered briefly in the air, and then faded into silence. For a moment no one moved. The quiet was full, not empty. Then applause rose again, stronger than before, filled with gratitude and admiration. The girl stood slowly, feeling the warmth of the moment around her. She bowed slightly, guided by her teacher, and smiled toward the sound of the audience. The man stepped forward and placed a gentle hand over his heart, acknowledging the crowd. But his attention remained on the girl. He thanked her for sharing the music with him. And with everyone present, the girl nodded shyly, yet proudly, holding the memory of this moment close, knowing that music had once again opened a door she never feared to walk through. The applause slowly settled into a calm murmur, and the hall returned to a gentle stillness. The girl remained close to the piano, listening to the sounds around her, and feeling the warmth of what had just happened. Her heart felt full yet peaceful, as if the music had spoken everything she needed to say. Her teacher guided her a few steps forward and spoke softly, reminding her where she was and who stood beside her. The man bent slightly to her level and spoke with kindness. He asked her how she felt playing the music and whether she enjoyed sharing it. The girl answered honestly, saying that the music made her feel brave and free. Her words were simple yet carried deep meaning. He smiled, hearing this, knowing that such understanding could not be taught. He then spoke to her parents, expressing admiration not only for her talent, but for the support and care that surrounded her. He acknowledged the work it takes to nurture a child who faces challenges, and the love required to let her grow with confidence. Her parents listened quietly, overwhelmed and grateful. They felt seen not as spectators, but as part of the story. The audience remained seated, unwilling to rush away from the moment. Conversations were soft and respectful. People sensed they had witnessed something rare and meaningful. Teachers gathered near the stage, sharing smiles and quiet words of pride. Students looked at the girl with new understanding, seeing her strength and individuality more clearly than ever before. The girl was guided carefully off the stage and into a quieter space nearby. She held onto the feeling of the piano keys still warm beneath her fingers. She replayed the sound of the violin in her mind, feeling how it had blended with her own playing. She did not think of it as a surprise or a dream. She thought of it as a shared moment that belonged to the music. Later, as the hall slowly emptied, the man joined her again away from the noise. He spoke about music as a language that connects people beyond sight, age, or background. He told her that what mattered most was honesty and listening deeply, something she already did naturally. His words were gentle and encouraging, never heavy with expectation. The girl listened carefully, absorbing his voice and the meaning behind it. She felt inspired, not pressured. She did not suddenly imagine grand stages or fame. She simply felt encouraged to keep playing, to keep listening, and to trust herself. Her parents noticed this calm strength and felt reassured that the moment had lifted her rather than overwhelmed her. As the evening came to an end, the family prepared to leave. The girl held her parents' hands, walking slowly and confidently. The sounds of the hall faded behind them, but the memory remained clear and bright. She did not know how far the story would travel or how many people would hear about it. She only knew that music had once again given her a voice, and that voice had been heard with respect and kindness. The days that followed carried a quiet change that could be felt more than explained. The girl returned to her usual routines at home and school, yet something inside her had grown stronger. Teachers noticed a calm confidence in the way she walked into class and spoke during lessons. Her classmates treated her with a new softness and respect, not because she had shared a stage with someone famous, but because they had seen her courage and her joy in a way that felt At home, the piano became even more important to her. She played each day, not trying to repeat the concert, but letting her feelings guide her. Her parents listened from nearby rooms, hearing familiar melodies, shaped with new depth. They did not push her or speak often about the event. They understood that the meaning of the moment would unfold slowly in its own time. The teacher continued lessons as usual, focusing on technique, listening, and expression. Yet there was a shared understanding now that music could open unexpected doors. The teacher encouraged the girl to explore new pieces, and also to revisit old ones with fresh curiosity. The girl approached each piece with patience and care, trusting her ears and her instincts. Messages began to arrive from people who had been in the audience. Some wrote letters expressing how moved they had been. Others spoke to the school, sharing appreciation for the opportunity to witness such a moment. The school responded quietly without turning the experience into a spectacle. They wanted to protect the girl's sense of normal life and allow her to grow naturally. The man who had shared the stage kept his promise of encouragement without pressure. A simple message was sent offering continued support and reminding her to keep listening and enjoying the music. There were no demands, no expectations, just respect. This gesture meant much to the family because it honored the spirit of the moment rather than trying to shape it into something else. The girl felt a deeper trust in herself when she sat at the piano. She no longer questioned whether she belonged there. She knew the music welcomed her. She explored dynamics and phrasing with curiosity, discovering new ways to express feeling. She learned that strength could be gentle, and that leadership could be quiet. At school, another small concert was planned. Weeks later, the girl was invited to play again. She agreed calmly, seeing it not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to share something she loved. She practiced steadily, balancing effort with rest. Her parents supported her without pressure, reminding her that the joy of playing mattered most. On the evening of the concert, she walked onto the stage with familiarity. The space no longer felt intimidating. It felt known. She played with honesty, allowing mistakes to pass without fear. The audience listened attentively, sensing the sincerity in her performance. There was no surprise guest, no dramatic moment, yet the impact was just as real. Through these experiences, the girl learned that music was not about single moments of recognition, but about continuous growth, connection, and expression. She understood that the stage was simply a place to share what was already inside her. This understanding grounded her and allowed her to move forward with confidence and humility. The story continued quietly, carried by daily practice, supportive relationships, and a deepening love for music. What had begun as a single performance had become a steady path shaped by listening, trust, and shared humanity. As time passed, the girl's understanding of herself and her place in the world grew deeper. She did not think of the past event as something extraordinary anymore. It became part of her story, woven naturally into her everyday life. She continued to wake early, attend school, and practice music with the same quiet dedication. The difference was in how she carried herself. There was a steady confidence in her movements and a calm assurance in her voice when she spoke. Her classmates began to include her more naturally in group activities. They no longer hesitated, unsure of how to help. They listened to her cues and respected her independence. She, in turn, felt more comfortable asking for what she needed and offering what she could. Music had shown them all that ability is not defined by what someone lacks, but by what they bring. Her teacher noticed how she now approached new challenges with patience rather than doubt. When a passage was difficult, she did not become frustrated. She slowed down, listened carefully, and tried again. She understood that growth takes time and that mistakes were simply part of learning. This attitude began to influence other students who looked to her as an example of quiet determination. At home, her parents reflected often on the journey so far. They spoke softly about the importance of protecting her joy and keeping her life balanced. They encouraged friendships, rest, and play alongside music. They wanted her to grow not just as a musician, but as a whole person, confident, curious, and kind. Opportunities to perform came from time to time. Some were accepted, and others were declined based on what felt right for the family. The girl learned that saying no could be as important as saying yes. She trusted her feelings and the guidance of those who supported her. This sense of choice helped her feel in control of her path. She continued to listen to many kinds of music, exploring different styles and moods. She asked questions about composers and instruments and stories behind the pieces. Her curiosity expanded beyond the piano. She learned that music was a living conversation across time and culture, and she felt honored to be part of it. The man who had once stood beside her on stage remained a distant, yet steady presence. Through occasional words of encouragement, he did not shape her journey, but reminded her that sincerity matters more than perfection. His example stayed with her not as pressure, but as inspiration. Through all of this, the girl remained grounded. She laughed with friends, argued with siblings, and dreamed quietly about the future. Her dreams were not fixed or grand. They were open and flexible, shaped by trust in herself and love for music. The world around her continued to move and change, yet she felt prepared to meet it with listening, patience, and courage. The story was no longer about a single moment of surprise, It was about a life unfolding steadily guided by sound connection and inner strength. As the years moved forward, the girl carried her experiences with a gentle sense of gratitude. She did not feel defined by any single moment, or by the attention it once brought. She felt defined by the daily choices she made to listen, to learn, and to care. Music remained a constant companion, shaping her understanding of herself and others, without demanding anything in return. She grew taller, her hands stretching comfortably across the keys, and her playing gaining depth and nuance. She understood more about silence, about timing, and about the spaces between sounds. She learned that sometimes what is not played is just as important as what is heard. This awareness mirrored the way she lived her life, attentive, thoughtful, and present. People who met her for the first time often noticed her calm before they noticed her talent. She spoke with clarity and kindness, and listened fully when others spoke. She moved through the world with confidence, guided by sound memory and trust. She no longer felt the need to explain herself. Her actions and presence spoke clearly enough. Her parents watched with quiet pride as she continued to grow. They supported her, without holding tightly, understanding that their role was to walk beside her, not ahead of her. They celebrated her efforts more than outcomes, and reminded her often that her worth was never tied to performance. This foundation allowed her to explore freely without fear of failure. The teacher remained an important guide, offering knowledge, patience, and belief. The lessons extended beyond music into life values such as discipline, humility, and respect. The girl absorbed these lessons, naturally carrying them into every part of her life. The memory of that early performance stayed with her, not as a peak, but as a beginning. It reminded her that connection can happen anywhere when people listen with open hearts. It taught her that generosity and respect can change the course of a moment, and sometimes a life. She continued to share music in small halls, classrooms, and community spaces. Each performance was approached with the same sincerity that first touched others. Years before, she played not to impress, but to communicate and to connect. The audience may change, but the intention remained the same. In time, the story of the girl who once played the second waltz and was joined unexpectedly by a master musician became something others spoke about. Yet for her, it was simply one chapter in a much larger journey, a journey shaped by sound, courage, and kindness. Her life continued to unfold quietly, steadily, and beautifully, guided by listening, trust, and a deep love for music. She moved forward, ready to meet whatever came next with grace and honesty. The story reaches a gentle close, not with an ending, but with continuity. The girl is no longer seen only as a child who once played on a school stage. She is seen as a young person shaped by listening, patience, and trust. Her life continues to move forward step by step, guided by sound memory and confidence. She carries music with her not as a performance tool, but as a way of understanding the world. She learns that real success is not measured by applause or attention, but by inner peace and purpose. Music remains her steady companion, offering comfort, challenge, and expression. It teaches her how to listen to others, how to wait, how to respond with care. These lessons shape her relationships, her choices, and her sense of self. Those who once witnessed that early moment carry it quietly in their own memories. It becomes a reminder that kindness can appear unexpectedly, and that encouragement given at the right time can last a lifetime. The man who stood beside her that day remains grateful for the chance to listen and to support rather than to lead. The experience stays with him as a reminder of why music matters. The parents continue to walk beside their daughter with love and respect, trusting her path and honoring her independence. They know the journey will hold challenges and changes, yet they believe in her strength. Her teacher continues to guide her with patience, proud not of a moment, but of a growing character. The girl moves forward into new spaces, new sounds, and new chapters. She does not fear what she cannot see. She trusts what she can hear and feel and understand. Music gives her courage and clarity, and she offers that gift back to the world through her presence and her playing. This is not a story about surprise or fame. It is a story about connection, resilience, and quiet growth. It reminds us that when people truly listen, lives can meet and change, gently, honestly, and forever.